It looks like 2024 was the year of the handheld. There are just so many handhelds. The market is for sure getting saturated. But in hindsight, I'm very happy with the variety that we have here. There's been some great advancements in retro handhelds and clone consoles. PC handhelds hit their stride with some wacky form factors and second-gen iterations that address a lot of our grievances. And emulation handhelds might have gotten a little bit overplayed, but if you throw enough shit at the wall, eventually something's gonna stick. As emulation fans, seems like we're finally getting what we wanted. I'm sort of challenging myself to pick just 5 that I've reviewed this year. With so many great handhelds that have come out, it's been very hard to narrow it down to just 5. There's a lot that I've loved, but we've got a pretty great list of stuff that you might also be loving, and some stuff you might have missed over this past year. Hey, man! Did you put VPNs on all the computers without telling me? Yeah, we're sponsored by Surfshark now. This video is sponsored by Surfshark. Yeah. You that doesn't mean you can, like, see what I'm doing in there or anything, right? No, in fact, it's encrypted, so no one can. Yes! Cool, man. So, hey, I'm gonna be back in like 30 to 90 seconds. Don't come in or bother me at all. VPNs can help you change your location so that you can access content that might otherwise be blocked in your country, but they can also help you encrypt your data so that no one on your network can see what you're doing, not even your roommates or your ISP. Surfshark One gets you their VPN, private web search, data leak alerts, and their antivirus. There's no risk to trying Surfshark, and they offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. Secure your privacy with Surfshark. Go to surfshark.com/den to get 4 extra months of Surfshark. Why are you wet? I watch so much stuff. I watched this one video where there's this real estate agent, and she's totally not a real estate agent. All right, you got it. Okay, I'm trying to film something. Hey, bud. Hey, what? Merry Christmas. Okay, come on, man. That's enough. Anyway, I'm going to do this a little bit backwards, and I'm going to start with some honorable mentions. That way you know what's not going to be on the list. A lot of other people are going to have on their top 5 lists the Retroid Pocket 5. It seems like a pretty great handheld. I have not reviewed it yet. It is right here, still in the box. Shipping kind of took an ungodly amount of time. I did receive the Retroid Pocket Mini a few months back, but I wanted to wait until I got the 5 and review them both at the same time because I don't want to give them 2 videos. It finally came, but I'm booked with a lot of other stuff I gotta make videos on, so we'll probably have to wait until after the holidays. At least I'll have a nice solid 2 weeks to play with it over the holidays. Retroid makes great budget options for GameCube, PS2, and even surprisingly powerful Nintendo Switch emulation. I also really like Retroid for how easy it is to set up versus a lot of other emulation handhelds, especially Android ones. However, I already started messing with the Retroid Pocket Mini, and I have to say, I was pretty frustrated by that setup process. Also, one of the buttons is up on a software level. This is the second time this happened to me with the Retroid device. Also, the Retroid Pocket 4 came out earlier this year, and I haven't touched that once since I reviewed it. Well, that's just a little taste of what that review is going to be like, but I got to move on. I want to give Aya Neo a shout out for having a pretty good year this year. The Flip is a fantastic DS-style PC handheld. This thing really turned heads. This review was one of my most viewed videos of this year. And it was such a fun console to play with. Emulating 3DS games on a tiny PC with a massive screen is kind of sick. It's also the best Wii U emulator money can buy. I'd argue this is the best way to play some Wii U games. I loved this thing, but my time with it was a little short-lived. I played it for a few weeks after that review and then mostly shelved it for better PC handhelds. It's cool, but it is kind of a novelty. And let's not forget the Aya Neo Pocket DMG that I have right here because I literally just reviewed this. It's another really cool handheld, and I love how different it is than anything else on the market. It's a super powerful vertical handheld. No one else is doing vertical handhelds like this currently, but it's, again, another novelty. I don't know how much I'll actually be using it. Okay, those are just the honorable mentions, and we're already 3 handhelds deep, so let's get right along and go on to number 5 of my top 5 gaming handhelds of this year, and it might surprise you. We're talking about the funny playing FPGBC. Are you impressed that I memorized all of that? It's literally just a Game Boy. It's notable because it's an FPGA console similar to the Analog Pocket. So it emulates a Game Boy Color pretty closely on a hardware level. But unlike the Analog Pocket, it's under $100. So it's significantly cheaper. It comes as a kit, but it's incredibly easy and rewarding to put together yourself. It's honestly just a few screws. It's very simple. The downsides are that it requires multiple purchases. They really should just sell it as a bundle. It also doesn't play Game Boy Advance games like the Analog Pocket does, only Game Boy and Game Boy Color. It also has a weird clock speed. It's like slightly different than an original real Game Boy Color. So if you're anal about accuracy, maybe this isn't for you. But it is currently the best way to get what is essentially a modded Game Boy Color with a modern IPS screen. I got this thing back in January, and I've been thinking about it ever since, so it deserves a spot on this list. Number 4 is a device that I just recently reviewed. It's something that I thought I was gonna hate, and I'm taking it out of the case now because I recently just took it on a trip with me. It's been fresh on my mind ever since I got it. This is the Trim UI Brick. This checks a lot of boxes for me. It's extremely portable, but not too small to be uncomfortable to play. The screen is nice, everything looks great on here, and it's cheap. You can find it for just $60. It also has the perfect size to power ratio. It plays all the way up to N64 and even Dreamcast, and some DS games, if you can deal with them being played on a single screen. I loved my Mii Mini that came before this. The Trim UI Brick is slightly larger, but it can play a lot more stuff. Recently, Retro Game Core gave me a micro SD card with his special cocktail of MinUI on it, which makes it look even more like a tiny Analog Pocket. This simplifies the UI a ton. Unfortunately, I couldn't figure out how to get N64 games to work on here. On my last trip, I brought both my MSI Claw and my ROG Ally X, and I played neither of them. I played the Trim UI Brick the whole time. I played Pico 8 Celeste and Bomberman Hero. It means a lot if I'm willing to pick up a device on my leisure time, something I'm not actively reviewing, because there's just so much to choose from these days. So the Trim UI Brick definitely deserves its spot here at number 4. Number 3 is another case of a handheld that I slowly grew to love over time after I was done reviewing it, and that is the Odin 2 Mini. The Odin 2 came out last year, and I liked that a lot, but I slowly lost interest. It suffers from the same stuff that a lot of other 16:9 retro handhelds suffer from, and it's kind of just a Switch Lite form factor. There's nothing wrong with being like a Switch Lite, but if I wanted to play powerful modern games, I would just play them on a Switch Lite. The Switch Lite's only $200. It's kind of a great handheld. I don't need anything to be like that if it's gonna be more than twice the price. If I want to be emulating retro games, I'd rather have them in a more convenient form factor, and this form factor is perfect here on the Odin 2 Mini. It is essentially a PS Vita, but it is so cool to have a modern Vita that can play basically anything. It's super powerful and can play GameCube, Vita, and even Nintendo Switch games. When I first set it up, I set it up like I would any other emulation handheld. I got GameCube and PS2 games on there, but then I spent a decent amount of time getting Vita games on here. And I did it legitimately. I moved them from my hacked Vita over to my Odin 2 Mini. That was a huge pain in the ass that I don't recommend. But I did have a lot of fun playing Gravity Rush on here, even after I posted that video. But I fell in love with this device when Zelda Echoes of Wisdom came out. That was around the time that I got the MiG Switch Cart Dumper. This game is inspired by a game that is a remake of a Game Boy game. I think that might have something to do with why this game feels so good on a smaller handheld like this. It makes me wish that Nintendo would do something official, like make a tiny Nintendo Switch. I'm not even usually one for emulating modern games. I'd rather just play them how they're intended if it's easy enough to acquire. But man, something about getting it to work on here and having it be actually pocketable is pretty sick. There's some tinkering I had to do to get it to work on here, and it doesn't work perfectly. I'll just link a previous video where I go into more detail on how I got it to work on here. You can just watch that. Sometimes I have a lot more fun getting games to work than I do actually playing the game. Anyway, this Odin is one of the most powerful emulation handhelds that I own, and it's definitely the smallest one that can do pretty hefty Nintendo Switch emulation. And the screen is mini LED, which has a very similar look to OLED. It's kind of perfect. Since this, Ein released the Odin 2 Portal, which is bigger, has an actual OLED screen, and mostly the same specs. So I kind of think being bigger kind of defeats the purpose. I would much rather have this. I love this thing. I think they did a great job. It's number 3 for this year. There's only 2 left. People who watch my videos or people who are fans of handhelds in general probably know which 2 I'm going to be talking about. You'll probably know this one. This is the RG35XX-SP, and this is number 2 on the list. Oh, so what's number 1? Calm down, we'll get there. This year, Anbernic released about 1 billion XX devices, all with the same H700 chip inside. It got very old very quick. We don't need all these form factors, but having so many of these has its benefits. The software has been supported very well in this past year. It's gotten way better. Games run better. The default settings for each system are super well optimized. But that's pretty much the same on all XX devices now. The major benefit of this particular one is the SP's clamshell form factor. I'm not even that big of a clamshell fan. The fact that it looks exactly like a Game Boy Advance SP doesn't hit me in my nostalgia. But even I can't deny the practicality of a clamshell. It's perfect for just tossing in my bag. The H700 chip is a little stale by this point, but it is capable of a lot of systems, and even ports of some Steam games now. If you put some custom firmware on it, it can do a lot, and best of all, it's probably the easiest handheld to take with you. This was an incredibly popular handheld this year, and I totally get the hype. I played this way after my review, and modders and custom firmware people are still iterating and upgrading it. It gets number 2 on this list. Before we get to number 1, we already did the honorable mentions. Let's do some dishonorable mentions, some of the worst handhelds that came out this year. It's a little hard because I usually try not to bother with stuff if they're going to be really bad, so I guess you can consider these the most disappointing. MSI made some interesting decisions with the Claw earlier this year. It was actually pretty good in a lot of ways. It was the quietest handheld by far, but the things that mattered most, the compatibility with games and the price tag. If you put those 2 together, you have the perfect why console. Why does this exist? Who is this for? The Ein Loki is another one I was interested in. The release was a show. They changed around their different versions so much that I accidentally got 2 that were technically different SKUs, but indistinguishable from each other. It was also not powerful at all. It probably would be pretty great for retro and indie games, but Windows is just not a great OS for a low-powered device. And at this point, just get a Steam Deck. The 40XXV has a lot of the accolades of the SP, but it came out later, had a thumbstick that doesn't work right with the stock firmware, and was Anbernic's first console to launch with pirated PC games on it. So it was all around just a bad decision factory. This is the handheld that made me decide to stop reviewing so many of these. I can't do it anymore. They've just gotta be more different and more interesting than this. Okay, we've stalled long enough. It's time for number 1. You might have forgotten that this list also includes PC handhelds. We're gonna talk about the ROG Ally X, which is my favorite handheld that has come out this year. Probably the most popular PC handheld that came out this year. This changed a lot about the original ROG Ally. You now have 24 gigabytes of RAM instead of 16, and the RAM is slightly faster. You've got better thumbsticks that don't rub all weird. We've got room for full-sized SSDs, so you can upgrade your SSD for way cheaper now. 2 USB-C ports and 1 that's Thunderbolt 4 for better compatibility with eGPUs. And most importantly, the micro SD card slot has been moved so it won't overheat on you. Asus got in a lot of trouble for how they handled the original ROG Ally's micro SD card slot. This controversy also uncovered their horrible customer service. I don't love how they handled that micro SD card issue in the last ROG Ally. But it would seem that they did a little bit of a reform of their warranty and customer service situation. So if you have any issues like that micro SD card issue, it should be covered by now. I would still recommend, if you want one of their products, get it through a brick and mortar store like Best Buy. That way you're covered under their warranty and return service as well. You'll have a little bit of a double protection. The fact that the Ally X is #1 is because I've been using it the most. Had it broken on me and had I had customer service issues, maybe it wouldn't be #1. But so far, nothing's happened. I've even serviced it myself. The real reason it's #1 on this list isn't because of its small improvements. It isn't even because of how it comes stock. I probably wouldn't love it as much as I do if I didn't put Bazite on here. If you watch my videos, you're probably so sick of me talking about Bazite so much. It's essentially a custom version of SteamOS made specifically for these devices. But Bob, doesn't that defeat the purpose of a Windows handheld? You say in a really annoying voice. Yeah, it does. Before this, I would reach for my Steam Deck and play most of my PC games portably on a Steam Deck. Now, I almost never play my Steam Deck. I pick up the Ally every time. It defaults to booting into Bazite, so most of the time, I just have a Steam Deck-like experience. But now it's more powerful. And if a game doesn't support SteamOS, I can just boot it into Windows and play it that way. It's the best of both worlds. It is hard to recommend this over a Steam Deck because I know not everyone wants to put the work into installing Bazite. And the Ally X is more expensive than a Steam Deck. It's not as good of a deal. But if you want a Windows handheld anyway, putting Bazite on there might be a good move. The Ally X absolutely gets my #1 pick for this year because it's been my go-to handheld for most of my personal gameplay. Anything I play on PC gets downloaded onto this. A few weeks ago when I went to the MSI event over in LA, I took my MSI Claw because I wanted to compare it to the new one that I was going to be seeing there. But I also took the Ally X along with me because I just wanted it for playing my PC games. Did I have to lug it all the way over there? No, I could have just played games on the MSI Claw, but that's how much I love the Ally X and kind of how much I hated the MSI Claw. I mentioned before that I didn't end up playing either of them and I just played the Trim UI brick, but we can just forget about that for now. It may have gotten #1 because of some stuff that I did to it, but that still counts. It's just the most compatible and the handheld I've been spending the most time with. The best that this year had for me, for sure. So what do you guys think? And what did I miss this year? Was there anything that I didn't check out that I absolutely should? I do still have to do the Retroid Pocket 5 and the Mini. I also have the Mod Retro Chromatic. I don't think that's gonna make it to one of these lists. Do you think that one of these devices should have been higher or lower? Leave it in the comments below, at me on Twitter or Blue Sky, and any and all of this other social media garbage. Also, twitch.tv/WolffDen if you want to talk to me in real time. Thank you, Surfshark, for sponsoring this video. And of course, the most important thing that you can do to support us is subscribe. We're so close. Every year we get closer and it gets slower going to 1 million. Share this video with a friend who you want to get into the handheld space. Thank you guys very much. And thank you it's been a great 2024. And you guys have just been so great. I'm going to take a brief little siesta because nobody's sponsoring me the first week of January and I feel like sleeping. And we're going to come back with a little bit of something different. Thank you. Thanks. And have a happy and healthy. See ya.